Now, a few people came up to my table earlier and asked the question that I'm always asked, which is, what is the best task app or calendar to use in order to get more done? And I'm very happy to answer that question, but all of the efficient time managers in here know that those task apps and those calendars are secondary tools. The most important tool is something that each one of you already possesses, and that is your brain. Because time management is truly all about mind management. Because it's your brain that decides how you're going to react to a person or to a situation or whatever it is that is put in front of you. Your brain decides how you're going to use every single minute of the day. And so that's why if your brain is in charge of time, it's also important to think about how your brain perceives time and thinks about time. So I'd like to start off with the question of, have you ever thought about what life experiences you've had that affect how you view time? A memory that I'd like to share with you happened a very long time ago, back in Los Angeles, where I was growing up. This was the 1970s, so for the youngins out there, this is back in the day where the phones were attached to the wall instead of in your hand, and cars didn't have automatic anything, no automatic locks, and no automatic windows. And in this memory that I have, my brother and I are playing in the kitchen, picture avocado green floor from the 70s, and my mom is setting the table for dinner. The phone rings, and my brother and I know this is our chance to play a stealth game of tennis balls, because we were not allowed to play in the house. So if my mom's back was turned, this was our chance. And it was almost dinner, and we figured, oh, it's just my dad, he's calling, saying he's going to be late again coming home from work. So my mom goes to answer the phone, and my brother and I are tossing the ball. And you know, it's funny, when you were little, and your mom was yelling and trying to call you back into the house for dinner, you just could not hear her. But 10 seconds before my mom was about to hang up that phone, we knew she was about to hang up and we needed to stop playing. So we stood at attention, because at that age you don't realize that standing at attention means you're guilty. And despite this fact, my mom comes over knowing that we're guilty, but she doesn't say anything about it. Instead, she just stares at us with this funny look on her face and she says, "Get in the car." When your mom looks at you that way, you go get in the car. So we did, and my brother and I start peppering her with questions. Where are we going? Was that Daddy who called? Are we going out to dinner? Sizzler. Any Southern Californians in here? No, Sizzler. Mom, can we have French fries instead of salad? So we're asking all of these questions, and my mom never answers us. Eventually, we slow down, and as my mom is pulling over to the side of the road, I noticed all these gorgeous red and blue lights swirling, but it wasn't Christmas. Had no idea what was going on. When my mom pulls over, she says with that same look on her face, which as an adult I now understand is fear, she gets out of the car, and just like a movie, that slow motion scene where they're walking slowly across the street, we see my mom walk over to a group of police officers. And that's when we spotted my dad. He was standing there with a coat over his shoulder, his necktie totally undone, and he introduces my mom to the officers. Now, eventually, he comes back to the car, and so my brother and I start up the interrogation again. Daddy, Daddy, did you get in trouble? Were you in an accident? Did you get arrested? Daddy, are we going out to dinner? He looks at my mom, and when he glanced over at her, I saw this cut on his cheek, caked with dry blood, and that wasn't there in the morning. My mom nodded to him, and my dad proceeded to tell us, "Do you remember me telling you about my boss, Mr. Verne? Well, we had a late meeting tonight, so I dropped him off at his car, and I didn't realize that he did not lock the door. When I got to the next intersection, a man with a mask jumped into my car, held a gun to my face, and told me to drive to this intersection." My brother and I were in awe. "Oh, you saw a robber? What did he say to you? Did he get arrested? Are we going out to dinner?" So my dad answers all of our questions all the way home. No, the police never caught the robber. And you can imagine from this incident, I learned to always make sure my doors are locked, even if they're automatic locks, and to be very observant whenever I'm at an intersection and make sure I understand what's going on around the car. But the more profound lesson happened later that night when my parents thought that my brother and I were sleeping. I can hear my mom's voice coming from the living room, and she was not happy. I could just picture her with her hands on her hips, because that's where your hands go when you're yelling at somebody. And I could hear her yelling at my father, "What do you mean? You're working late again? Your kids are going to grow up not knowing who you are. And what's the point of dragging into work?" And I've talked to all of your colleagues, Chet, Christine, Kay, all of you work around the clock. And for what? You're dragging the next day. Fast forward to my first job out of college, and my fiance and I had just had that very same argument about how much time I was working and how I wasn't paying attention when I got home. And in that moment when I'm standing in the supply room of my first job, my flashback was not to the red and blue swirling lights and the cut on my father's face from a gun, but it was to that argument that my parents had about time. And I realized how precious time is.